Welcome into the PantherExtra podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Petrick. No Jim today, so I'm recording from home. Jim is on vacation. He's dropping his daughter off back at school for her second year. So I'll be handling the show solo for a little while here, and then we'll get into a guest, Kelly Howe, who he covers North Dakota for UNDFootball360. So he's going to give us the scoop on the Fighting Hawks and help me preview that matchup a little bit, maybe share a couple of keys to victory if you're a UND fan, or maybe figure out what you might expect to see the Fighting Hawks try to deploy to defeat the Panthers if you're a UNI fan, as the Fighting Hawks make their return to the Dome for the first time since 2006. I wanted to do the math there, and I couldn't. As you can see, I have a ferocious predator seen stalking my office here at home. It's my orange cat, Spot. He wanted to co-host the show today, but I had to say I'm going to pass on Spot. So we'll go ahead and preview the matchup with the Jackrabbits a little bit here. Might get some input from Spot as he tries to dig his way out underneath that door. But let's look at that battle with number 1 South Dakota State a little bit. I was in Brookings on Saturday, and I was really surprised by what I saw from UNI. We got a 5-turnover performance in the first half. The possessions went fumble or 10-yard punt, fumble, interception, fumble, interception. Certainly not what you would draw up if you were hoping for a solid day, an upset win for South Dakota State, or for UNI over South Dakota State, over the number 1 team in the country. That's not how you're going to defeat a number 1 team in the country. Not by any stretch of the imagination. I went out to practice on Tuesday, and I talked to offensive coordinator Bodie Reeder. You can read more of his comments in my preview coming out tomorrow morning. But basically what he said is 5 turnovers and a half makes it impossible to evaluate the game plan. And I can understand that a little bit, because if you look at what UNI did in that loss, you start out 10-yard punt, fumble. On those 3 drives, UNI ran 10 plays. In those 10 plays, they gained 50 yards. 20, 10, 20. Those are the sequences of drives. That's 5 yards a play. I think any coach in the country is going to take 5 yards a play. That gets you into the end zone more often than not, unless you're turning over the ball. Then you're not going to get to the end zone. And that's what Captain Sam Schnee said when I talked to him on Tuesday as well. It's like, this is going to kill drives if we keep turning over the ball. So they hit ball security right away in practice on Tuesday. And that's what they needed to do, because we saw the offense averaged 5 yards a play against the number 1 team in the country, a top-tier FCS team that looks to be leagues better than everyone else. They were efficient. They just turned the ball over. And Bodie Reeder, when I was talking to him, he mentioned, like, a lot of the time it was a guy looking to get a couple extra yards stretching the ball out. So they were avoidable mistakes, and you were efficient, and it cut you out. It took the wind out of your sails to take a little bit of what Coach Farley told us on Monday. So if you're looking at it, South Dakota State is the best team in the country, and you went out there and you showed that you could probably play with that team and you could have an efficient game plan. So that's encouraging. But then you go and look at it, 5 turnovers, you lose 41-6. The game's basically over before half, and you feel probably horrible about it. I know driving back from Brookings, I was like, geez, that was not fun to watch. Courier photographer Chris Zoller also said, I was like, yeah, I had as many pictures as I could have taken, but you and I didn't really do anything, and it's because they just kept giving the ball back to South Dakota State. And as we know, UNI is not a time of possession team. They're not going to dominate time of possession. So if they're giving the ball back to a South Dakota State and just surrendering the ball to them shortly into drives, it's not the time of possession battle that they're already commonly losing. It's just going to get that much more exaggerated. I don't have the time of possession numbers as Spot walks in front of me here, but it wasn't pretty. I can remember that much. It was probably 35-25 in favor of South Dakota State. I'm just going to pull it up real quick here if I can. I didn't think South Dakota State looked super dominant. It did feel like they maybe got a chunk play every time they threw the ball, and that's been an Achilles heel for UNI, as we've seen, giving up the explosive play, the chunk play. But how much of that was just not having momentum at that point? So I tend to go a little bit light on the analysis from this game and maybe not be so much doom and gloom. I can certainly be that at times. I don't think you're doom and gloom after this game. So I think that, yeah, it's 24 minutes and 37 seconds for UNI, 35-23 for South Dakota State. Nailed that one. Yeah. So number one takeaway, probably the biggest takeaway, and I had this in my 5 takeaways, is you played ball with the number one team in the country. You found success against the number one team in the country. You could play with the number one team in the country. You just can't cough the ball up 5 times. And I think if you're a UNI fan, you should be encouraged by that. Granted, South Dakota State won both halves, 24-3 and 17-3. But I don't think that's the end of the world. I don't think you're looking at the production and just killing UNI for that. So, number one takeaway, you can play ball with the number one team in the country. You can find success against the number one team in the country. That means you can do it against everyone else. That means you can do it this week against North Dakota. That means you can do it next week against a ranked Illinois State team. And that means you can do it in the season finale at home against the North Dakota State Bison, who just lost to North Dakota last week, 49-24, I believe it was. It wasn't pretty for the Bison. They look like they're gettable this year. I wouldn't be surprised to see UNI get a win. I mean, they've beat a dominant NDSU team before, and now they look like they're available. They're ripe for the taking, I guess. That was North Dakota's first win against the Bison since 2003. I mean, it's raining cats and dogs. Oh my, in Fargo right now. So I'm not super down on UNI after that, and it's the impression I got from Bodie Reeder as well. I don't want to spoil the preview too much, but they weren't focused on the negative after that game either. The injury update is Ty Edwards didn't play, Ben Belkin didn't play, Jaden Elsley, he diagnosed with a concussion from the hit he took in that game. Was not an illegal hit. It was not targeting. It was just incidental contact to the head. Incidental head-to-head contact. Wasn't anything that either player did to cause that to be a head-to-head hit. Just two guys colliding. Unfortunate. He was able to return with the team, as I've reported, as I'm sure Cole has reported as well for the Gazette. So the outlook is positive. Farley was pretty positive on Monday. And then Harrison Baybui, he has been confirmed out. We don't have a timeline yet. I asked Farley if he expected to be long-term, and he said he does. Outside of that, we don't have any other injury news on Harrison Baybui, which is unfortunate. If you're looking at it, if Ty Edwards can't go again this week against North Dakota, if Harrison's out, who's running the ball? We saw Zach Brand, J.C. Roque, and Josh Jenkins run the ball. Josh had a pretty bad fumble. Just UNI's defense forced a fumble, and then Josh just gave it right back. I'm a big Josh Jenkins fan. I think he can be something exceptional. I don't know if he's ready for that kind of role yet, where he's an every down guy. We did see them turn to Zach Brand, the Iowa transfer from Dallas Center Grimes, pretty early. I think he got the bulk of the carries after that. I believe it was 7-2 for JC and Josh combined. I still have the game score pulled up here. Yeah, Zach had 6 carries. JC got 4, and Josh got 2. None of them found the end zone, as you and I didn't find the end zone, period. So what are you going to do at running back? I mean, Sam Schnee is a guy who's played running back before. I don't think they're going to move him. I think they like what he provides. He is the team's leading receiver, after all, both receptions and yards. So don't really want to take him away, because to steal from Kirk Ferentz a couple of weeks ago when I asked him about Cooper DeJean, you don't want to create a hole somewhere else where it's currently a strength just to fill what is perceived to be a hole elsewhere. So Sam Schnee's played running back before, but I don't imagine they're going to move him over. When I was at practice on Tuesday, he was not taking snaps at running back. He's at wide receiver. Yeah, so I think Josh Jenkins would probably be your lead guy. He was pulled off kick return, so he didn't get hurt. Coach Farley mentioned, or he joked, he didn't mention, he joked that if any more running backs get hurt, I'm suiting up for the Panthers. I don't think they want to see that. My road to glory in NCAA football 14 was always running back, but I'm not that guy. I'm not at any point in my history. I'm as slow and brick-footed as possible. No moves, no agility here. I do mop up on the pickleball court, though. Don't want to be too negative on myself. Looking ahead at North Dakota, I like UNI's chances. I mean, the Hawks are coming off of a big win, as I mentioned, first time beating NDSU since 2003. That's an emotional victory. It was at home. You're not at home this time. I like UNI almost as a trap game opponent here. I think they're going to be motivated after laying a big egg against the number one team in the country. That was embarrassing. You want to rectify that, right? So I think UNI is going to come play motivated football. I think North Dakota's going to struggle to get over the emotions of that game, leave that game in the past because of what it meant. A lot of North Dakotans on that roster, so they know what that game means. It's not something that's missed by that roster. The significance of that win is not lost on that roster. So I like UNI as a trap game opponent. I like that it's at home in Cedar Falls. That plays well. North Dakota is a dome team, so that's not going to change anything dome-wise. Tommy Schuster, fifth-year senior quarterback. He has yet to throw an interception. North Dakota is +5 in turnover differential, so they're opportunistic. They don't give the ball away. That's going to be tough. UNI struggled to make the momentum-turning play on defense. I don't know if that's going to be something that alarms you. The one thing that is positive is Schuster does not push the ball super far downfield. He's not looking for the explosive play, which has been the Achilles heel, as I mentioned, for UNI. So, to wrap up this section, put a bow on it, we'll get to Kelly here in a moment. I like UNI to win this game. You'll get my prediction in the next segment, so stick around for that. I like UNI. I think you should be confident going into this game if you're a Panthers fan. And I think you need to pack the dome. I think that's going to be your biggest strength right now. It's hard after a loss like what we had on Saturday, what we saw on Saturday. It's going to be tough, but you need to pack the dome, and that's going to be a huge momentum changer, momentum shifter for the Panthers, I think. So, revenge game. UND has not been here since 2006. No one on the current roster knows what it's like to play in the dome. Make it loud, make it uncomfortable, and get a big top 10 win. You've had 2 chances at a top 10 win this year against Weber State and South Dakota State. You're 0-2 in top 10 games. Go ahead and flip that. Get one in the column. That's what Sam Shanae told me they're trying to do, is get one in the win column. So I think that's pack the dome, get the win. That's as simple as it gets. That's it, boiled down. Before we get to the next segment with Kelly, go ahead and check out a nice article by my coworker Donald Prominence on UNI swim and dive student athlete Olivia Chambers and her service dog Mahi. Real fun story. That was on the cover of the Thursday edition of the Courier. If you want a physical copy, see a nice dog begging for some belly scritches there on B1 and B3. Be on the lookout for my preview that's dropping tomorrow morning. Got some commitment news dropping tomorrow morning as well. It's not, if you're active on social media, you already know. It's already been reported last Monday. But got the story, got the scoop on UNI commit, offensive line commit, Landon Kunin from Waukee Northwest. So go ahead and check out that story as well. That'll do it for this section of the Panther Extra Show. Be sure to tune in a moment for myself and an interview with Kelly Howe of UNDFootball360. Welcome back to Panther Extra. I am joined by Kelly Howe of UNDFootball360. He does a podcast and covers the Fighting Hawks up in North Dakota. Kelly, thank you for joining us. How are you doing this morning?
Doing good. After last weekend, I think everybody in the UND fan base is doing quite well this week. It's been a long was a long 20 years, and team finally got the win, and the fan base is exhilarated, and yeah, things are going good. But now the reason why we're on this podcast, Ethan, now we got another tough one coming up. They got to be ready to roll this week.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the win that the Fighting Hawks had over the Bison. Because when I was on your show yesterday, you guys mentioned that there's potential that this could become a trap game after a big emotional win last week. What's your sense, I guess, of that part about this matchup between the Panthers and Fighting Hawks?
It's hard to get a read on them. I mean, not being around the program, you just don't quite know. You would assume, hey, they're able to kind of maybe Monday get it out of their system. All right, hey, we got to have this thing done because we got a team waiting for us. That's pretty good, So that's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of veteran leadership on that team. So I'm thinking they kind of reined it in and said, hey, let's look big picture, guys. This is just one game. I mean, it's a big one, and we all wanted it. But it's one game and it's a means to an end type of a thing. So I think they could take on that mentality. Now, the only way we know is 4:00 on Saturday, whether they're ready to go or not. But yeah, I think this is a little bit different team. I think the mentality, they'll be able to kind of regroup and say, all right, hey, we got Theo Day and a hell of an offense waiting for us here. We probably don't want to celebrate too long. We got to get going.
Yesterday, you guys also compared where these two teams are coming from. Get 2 wins over Drake in Northern Arizona, then you lose to an FBS opponent, and then South Dakota State. So similar in that respect. UNI has 1 extra loss on their ledger. You guys have beat Western Illinois and North Dakota State, as we mentioned, since losing to South Dakota State 42-21. Where do you think this North Dakota team is at, just in terms of the Valley race and they have top 10 billing right now in the coaches poll. Where do you think this North Dakota team is at in terms of the Valley?
In terms of Valley, everybody's chasing South Dakota State. We know that. We already saw them. You saw them last week. We saw them a few weeks ago, and they're on a different planet than everyone else. So, I mean, I think everyone's fighting for second. And UND certainly doesn't have us. Just because they beat NDSU doesn't mean they're second. They could end up 4th or 5th in 2 weeks. You never know. And yeah, as far as the Missouri Valley goes, you just don't know. I would say, that there's the top group. Northern Iowa's still in it. Obviously, they just haven't. I don't think they've played to their potential yet, but it's coming together. You know what I mean? And I think they'll be fine. Geez, Illinois State's another one that scares me that people don't talk about because their defense. UND struggled with their defense. I think it was last year or 2 years ago, really struggled to move the ball. But yeah, there's some top teams, and Southern Illinois is another one where, they lost. They put up 3 at Youngstown, but they're still a top team. And I don't know. I'm trying to answer your question. I'm sitting here, I'm looking at all these teams. I'm like, this team can beat this team, but this team, you know what I mean? Everybody can beat each other except South Dakota State. So I think as far as UND goes, asking about UND, they need to view this as this is their hurdle. They just got over the hurdle. They finally got over the NDSU hurdle as a top team in the Missouri Valley, right? Okay, now we can beat top teams in the Missouri Valley. Can we do it again? Now, if they can do it again this weekend, then I think things kind of fall into place for them. They can maybe even get a seed. But if they drop this one, geez, then we're back to, well, are we ready yet? Are we ready to, vault to be a solidified top 3 team? It's just, I think, the fan base just wants to see it. We want to see scaffolding. I call it scaffolding. You want to see it, just keep inching up. So it'll be interesting. But, Missouri Valley, I don't know. I mean, other than what, the bottom 3, I think you'd agree. Yeah. Anybody could win every week.
Yeah. I mean, outside of when you're going up against South Dakota State, like we've mentioned, anybody can win any given weekend. And I think that's what Coach Farley tells us every Monday, pretty much. I get a coach speak answer every time I ask him about the upcoming opponent. If it's not, well, we're just focused on us, it's, well, anyone can win anytime in the Valley. So absolutely. And I'm sure Coach Bubba Schweiger gives you guys a similar message each week.
Where Youngstown, I didn't even mention Youngstown. They're good this year. You guys saw them in that wild one you had.
Yeah, that was a weird game because Youngstown State ended up playing to UNI. We thought UNI was going to have to shift to a more physical game than maybe the offense is used to playing, since they're a high-powered offense. We figure they're going to have to play a little bit more of a physical game. But Youngstown State ended up trying to play the touchdown chase with UNI a little bit, 44-41. So that was an interesting game, not how I expected it to play out at all. So yeah, absolutely wide open. What I want to know is, because it just seems like this North Dakota team is middle of the pack at everything. They're like 40th in every stat in the FCS. Where are the wins coming from? They're number 9 in scoring offense, so I know they're finding the end zone plenty. But where is it? The run game? Is it the pass game? Where are the wins coming from for this North Dakota team?
Well, first thing that popped in my head is I think years ago, remember, I don't know if you remember, Hero Sports did like recruiting rankings. Okay, they would do recruiting, which is hard. I mean, FCS, you don't know who's going to pan out, but they, it's something to get some clicks and compile some stars, whatever. UND was never top 25, ever. I don't think they broke it once, and they did it for 4 or 5 years straight. So I think I tweeted out to Sam Herder, I'm like, isn't this crazy? I go, UND is a top 20 team every year, and they make the playoffs 4 or 5 times now in Bubba Schweigert's era, but they're never a top 25 recruiting class. I go, so what's going on? Well, he writes back, he's like, it's the sum of the parts. He goes, they just don't ever have superstars, which now, I mean, Bo Belquist is bordering on that area now, but they don't ever have superstars. They don't ever have the fastest guy on the field. They don't ever have the 6'3", 240 linebacker, it's just like killing people out there. The defensive end who's just sticks out. Their guys don't stick out. And I use it a lot. I don't know if you ever heard me say, but the 50-yard line test, you stand there, you look left, you look right, pregame, right? Who looks better? Just do a quick. UND loses more of those than they win. I mean, they'll beat out Western Illinois. Okay, they'll beat out, but you get your Northern Iowas back. This year we'll see what they look like. But they showed up at the Alara Center last year, and oh my God, these linemen that you guys had. I'm looking at this thing. I'm like 6'7", 6'7". I'm like, these guys are huge.
Yeah.
Well, UND's never had the biggest guys, but it's always a sum of the parts. So the coaches put them in positions and they work on things. I think it's just belief. Yeah, I think they just believe. It's just a team effort. But that gets you in trouble in a big game if the team effort isn't good enough to outdo South Dakota State down in Brookings, right? I mean, it's if you don't have the good enough players, you're just not gonna beat those top teams. So, they know they want better players. They're not dumb, I mean, they need the high-end athletes. But yeah, to answer your question, I think it's a belief. It's a, culture in the locker room. I believe they buy into the system. I think the coaches really work hard on game planning, like deep game planning, because they know all 11 guys have to execute to move the ball, because we can't just drop back and throw a bomb post down the middle and score. It's just not happening. So we got to earn our way down the field, right? So yeah, I mean, that's UND. They just never been at the top of really anything, any rankings that you'll look at, especially recruiting. Recruiting, it's just they get guys that don't get a ton of FCS offers. They just don't, but they got to develop them and they got to get them to buy in, and then that's when I think it comes together. But like we said earlier, got to take that next step. The whole fan base is waiting for that playoff win, run to the quarterfinal, that type of thing.
I think when you're talking about recruiting rankings and never being near the top, but always when the games actually happen being near the top, I think everyone who might be an Iowa Hawkeye fan and a UNI fan, I think they recognize that with the black and gold, because I don't think Iowa's ever in the top 40 in recruiting rankings, but they managed to get the wins on the field, and that. So I feel like there's some similarities there for sure. Yeah. Yep. What I want to ask about is, because I saw him tear up my alma mater, Nebraska, last year and just about lead the Fighting Hawks to a win, is Tommy Schuster, your guys' quarterback. What level of comfort do you guys have coming into each game with a veteran presence like that under center?
High level of comfort, very high. Okay, I said it on a podcast, I think it was a few weeks ago, and it was unfortunately it was before the Boise game when he didn't play very well and he didn't have a whole lot of time either, but high level of comfort. He's very intelligent, and he's been around since, oh boy, his first game was 2019 against Sam Houston. I think our quarterback got knocked out and he had to come in as a freshman, and he led them to a win. They beat Sam Houston at home, And so he's seen a ton of ball. But I've discovered a little more about UND does a lot of RPO stuff. So he's got to make a decision real quick on what he's going to do, and it's more of a pre-snap, right when the ball snap type decisions. He's very good at that. Very intelligent, very quick. Not the biggest arm, but I think everyone in the fan base is very comfortable, very happy that Tommy's our guy. He's kind of the opposite of Theo Day. Okay, so watch Theo Day run out and then watch Tommy run out. You're gonna laugh because he's about 5'10, 5'11, whatever, 180 maybe. If that, he throws the longest pass he's going to throw is about 30 yards probably, and he'll throw it early to get it out there. Whereas Theo Day will come trotting out. And I remember last week I was like, wow, this kid's a specimen, 6'5", whatever, 220. Throwing, he hit that post last year down the middle on us. At first, we score. Theo Day comes running out, snap it, bomb down the middle, 75-yard touchdown, one play. We're like, the fan base is looking around like, what the? Because we don't do that. UND doesn't play like that, So it was those types of things. But it'll be funny on Saturday to watch those two contrast the way they play and the way. So he's a little bit of a runner, Tommy. He'll take off a little bit just to keep him honest, get 4 yards and slide type of thing. But as far as Tommy, we're very, very lucky to get him. I don't know. I'll save you the backstory, but what a guy decommitted is what happened late in December.
Okay.
And ended up going down south to an FBS. And then they found Tommy in Michigan. He still hadn't committed yet. And that's kind of how it came about. So I didn't have a whole lot of background on him, but it worked out quite well.
And like I told you guys yesterday, UNI struggles to stop the explosive play, the big play. Maybe not necessarily Tommy Schuster's game from the sounds of it, but maybe struggles with mobile quarterbacks like Tommy Schuster. And that was something we asked Coach Farley about. And he definitely said that's something we need to keep our eye on, because I would put plenty of spies on him last year and he'd still figure out how to get a couple of yards and get away from my guys. They're really great in run defense, top-notch run defense right now. Knowing that about the UNI defense, where do you think you would like to attack the UNI defense if you were Bubba Schweiger coming into this game?
I see it being the opposite of last week. UND decided they were going to run the ball last week against NDSU, which is typically insanity. You're not going to do that against NDSU, but this isn't the same defensive line that they had. So UND, I think, second half ran the ball 23 out of 26 times in the second half against NDSU and just decided they were going to do it. This week, I don't see that at all. I think they're going to do it. They're going to run it and see what happens. Obviously, you have to, right? But I think they'll go left and right. This will be, I like to make games black and white, Ethan. Like a little bit like run up the middle. This is a middle game or this is a left and right game, because UND will do both easily. They'll just start running bubble screens. They'll start running flare screens. They'll run, little things like that. They got it all set. The RPO stuff, basically. But I think it'll be a left and right game. I think it'll be a game more like if they struggle in space, UNI, NDSU struggled in space to tackle. And I think that's what we'll see this week. I think you'll see a lot of Bo Bellquist, Red, those guys getting the ball in the flat, getting the ball quick. Everything's quick with the UND's offense. You'll notice it in and out, in and out, in and out. And then they'll try to make you miss. So I don't see them. They're, the definition of insanity, right? They're not going to sit there and pound it up the middle. I saw your D line on tape. I was like, wow, this is a little different than NDSU's D line. It looked like NDSU's D line used to look, is what it was. But I don't see them being stupid. I see them getting down the field, intermediate throws, a lot of quick stuff, trying to make them miss in space, just because. It's UNI is good. We have trust me, the UND fan base and the UND coaches have a lot of respect for Northern Iowa and what they can do on the fields.
I can definitely confirm that respect goes both ways after hearing from Coach Farley. Before I let you go, you guys didn't make me do a prediction yesterday. Do you do predictions at all?
Oh yeah, we do predictions. We love doing predictions. So okay. Here, I'll tell you what, you got to go after me. How's that sound?
What? All right, I'll go after you. Sounds good.
No, on the show, it's going to be tight. I mean, if UND won by more than 7, I'd be shocked, type of thing. It's just the way UND on the road, it's always different for them. They're a different team at home versus a different team at home. I think Northern Iowa was a different team at home, judging by the results, that I've seen. Theo Day's thrown for over 300 yards in both your home games.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's more comfortable there. I picked, I believe it was 27-24 UND. I said, I think they pull out a squeaker. I mean, three-point game, but if you told me Northern Iowa was going to win by 10 or 14, okay. Because I don't know. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So I'll leave it up to you. See what you think.
I'm horrible at predictions, so don't take this one to heart. I'm terrible. I always go lower than I'm supposed to, so I'm going to try and shoot for a high score here. I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair. I'm going to go 38-35. I'm going to give UNI the edge. It's going to be a last-minute touchdown that ends it. I feel like every game I've seen in the Dome goes down to the final minute, so I'm relying on that history. I didn't get to see the entirety of the game last year. I had a friend who unfortunately scheduled a wedding on that Saturday, so I wasn't able to go to that one. I know, fall weddings. I was a sports reporter. He's like, hey, I need you in my wedding. I was like, well, I don't want to go to your wedding now, actually. No. Yeah, I'll go 38-35 UNI. You went 27-24 UND. So we'll see how it ultimately goes down in Cedar Falls this Saturday. Kelly, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It's always fun talking Valley football.
Absolutely.